Haney. She is our parenting pastor, our kids ministry team leader, all of the things. And so we just want to say thank you guys for coming tonight. I know many of you mad dash it from work, but we are excited to have a night of equipping in the room, a time of getting just parents and just anybody really who is around pretty much any other human. There's a possibility that they're working through some of this stuff. Anxiety, depression, just in general stress. Anybody in here ever feel some stress? Yeah? Okay. So we're very excited to bring in some speakers tonight who are licensed counselors and walk us through some of their tools. Tonight, though, before we do that, I just want to take a minute and bring your attention to a few things. One of those is the papers on your table. Everybody grab one of those. There are some pens as well. We want you guys to fill that out if it would be a blessing to you in any way. We want to hear feedback from you guys. There's a couple of specific questions on there, and so you don't have to put your name on it, but you can. If there's ways we can pray for your family specifically, hear us say that is a privilege for us to be able to partner with you in that, to bear each other's burdens and to put things before the Lord on behalf of each other. So feel free to fill that out. There's some other questions on there as well. So that's a big part of what we want you guys to know tonight. We also want you to know that this is very Q&A, okay? So feel free. I mean, this is a chance for us to be in here and talk about this. And so feel free to pick their brains. They came here because they want to help. And so hear me say that. They'll probably say that as well. As you have questions, maybe write them down and save them and be ready to kind of ask those questions in the room if you feel led to do so. Okay, so before we get started, I want to read a verse to you guys. I want to give you space to just pray, for us to just reset. We've had a day. Some of us maybe have had one of those stressful days. Some of you hopefully have had a joyful day, but before we kind of get going, let's bring it before the Father, and let's just stop and pause for just a second. So this verse is from Philippians, and I put something weird down there at the bottom, 13. That's a typo, so there's that, okay? Y'all know about that 13th verse? All right? So this is Paul speaking, and it's the very end of that book of Philippians, and what we know about Paul is he was in a lot of situations, a lot of circumstances that were stressful and probably put him in a place where he could have been very anxious, probably went to those dark nights of the soul kind of moments. He was imprisoned, he was shipwrecked, he was beaten, he was all the things for his faith. And this is what he says at the end of that book. He's telling other believers this. He says, I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. He says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. Been on both sides of the fence. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Are y'all ready? He's about to tell us a secret. This sounds like a good thing. It says, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, he says, I can do all this through who? Christ, who gives me strength. And so this verse, many of us know the 13th verse, okay? We've heard that one before, but sometimes we don't read the verses before it. That word content means to hold together. The word con is like with. Anytime that phrase is at the beginning of a word. And that word tent comes from the Latin tenere, which is to hold. And so he's saying, I figured it out. I know the secret about how to stay held together. And guess what? It's not anything I can do. I can't hold myself together. It is Christ. The good news is, it is Christ. There is a solution. He is the one, we sing about this on Sundays, who holds all things together. And he's working all those things together for what? For good, for those who love him. And so I want you guys to sit in that hope that we have, that at the end of the day, all these tools they're going to share with us are awesome. None of them are the magic bullet, though, at the end of the day. All of them are things that are tools that we can use within this context of our relationship with Christ alone, who is our strength. but he is our strength. And so reminding ourselves of that we have hope no matter what the circumstances are. So we're super excited, we're super grateful. I want to give you guys space for just a second to sit and to just reset and focus in on your Father right now, and then I'll pray and we'll get going. Y'all ready? Go ahead and pray. Father, above all, we know that it is Christ who is our strength, and we know that you are here, that you are with us, and so whatever we came in this room with, whatever brought us here, whatever answers we're looking for, God, we thank you that you alone are enough and are all we need, and in this time, we just lay that before you, whether we're burdened, whether we're broken, whether we're coming in here joyful and just wanting to learn more, we put it all before you, and we want all things for your glory. And so we lay that at your feet in this moment, God. Thank you for the gift of this room and this space to be together and to learn tips and tools and things that hopefully can help just bring healing and bring hope to the people in our lives. So we love you, God. All this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Right. Well, I also want to repeat, what Emily said. We are so glad you're here tonight, and I want you guys. I'm Christy with the family ministry team, and I want you guys to know, truly, from the bottom of our hearts, we want to walk these roads with you. If you're personally experiencing this with your kid or even yourself, if things come up, please don't be afraid to make it known. We're here. We want to walk through these hard things with you. We want to help your kids in kids ministry if they're struggling with things and it makes it difficult for them to normally sit in the classroom. Keep us informed. We want to love on those kids. We want to make things work for you and for them as best as we can. And we want to pray with you and encourage you. Coffees, if you want to go to coffee or lunch, whatever, let us be here for you as a team. We do want to support you in any of these things that you know, or if you just want to have a conversation. So I want to invite Dr. Cristina Sedjavian, did I say it right? Sedjavian, that was close, and Paige Price to come on up. They're going to be our speakers tonight. Both of them are staff or counselors, psychologists from Sparrow House, which is a counseling center that we refer a lot of people to. So they do an incredible job. So I'm excited. Please help me welcome them.
Thank you guys so much. It's so fun to be here with y'all tonight. Thanks for sharing your time and your busy schedule with us. We hope that this is helpful and an encouragement, even though the topics are kind of heavy. So I wanted to just say a few things about Paige and I. So we're from Sparrow House Counseling. It's a full service practice, but we're here, meaning we see adults and marriages and do all that kind of stuff. But we're here representing the child and adolescent team, which is actually a big team. It's 12 people now. So, and we really do work as a team because we know that families and kids benefit from that support. And then we like to work with other professionals on our team outside of our office too. So anyways, we're going to talk tonight about just emotional health in our children and adolescents. And I need to poll the room for a second. How many people here have children, elementary school age children? Okay, great. How many people here have middle school and teenagers? Okay, good. Okay, just so I'm going to make sure we're targeting the right things. How many people in here, and I want you to be brave and raise your hand, and I will join you in raising my hand. How many people here feel a little bit anxious about parenting all these little people? Okay. Hey, you know what? The research says that. It says right now, parents are more anxious about being parents. And I can tell you the parents that come in my office, and I would say the ones that come in my office are pretty in tune to what's going on, right, around them. They are saying, this is a really hard job. And a lot of times with teenagers in particular, I just kind of want to stick my head in the sand because it just feels too hard, right? So we're hoping tonight we can arm you with some information that really can encourage you and you can take this home with you. Okay, so we were asked to talk about anxiety and depression, and we're going to hit some suicide, just because if we're talking about depression, that's just something else we need to talk about with that. We are going to help you guys know what's sort of normal, typical, what is when you might start noticing a problem, and when is the time where you might need to, like, you know, call our office or call somebody's office and say, ooh, I think I've tried to do all my tricks and my tricks aren't working, so I need a little extra help here. During this time, we'll talk about some action steps. Questions, we're gonna have general questions at the end. If you have questions about what we're talking through, as we're talking through it, please raise your hand. We want it to be interactive. And if you've got some just other kind of mental health questions, we'll kind of save those to the end, or general parenting questions. Does that sound good? Okay, we're ready to go. Here we go. Okay, so Paige is gonna kick off anxiety here.
I would love to know, first of all, these are just kind of the most typical worries that we see. We're going to kind of distinguish for you what's normal, when does it cross the line. I'd love to hear from you guys. What are some common worries that you see in your children or teens? You just throw them out there. Monsters. Okay.
That's good. The littles. I'll come around with the microphone too. Somebody said safety over here.
Mm-hmm.
What do we have over here? I heard something else.
Attitude.
Oh, attitude. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Remembering schoolwork.
Yeah. I'm really worried I'm gonna forget this schoolwork. Yeah, absolutely.
Technology.
Yes, that's huge. Thank you for saying that. It's like the 500-pound elephant in the room, right?
Yes. So these are pretty basic. I would say safety is a really big one that we see a lot in little kids, whether it's the weather or scary things happening at school or drills. Any safety related thing, we see a ton of that. I would say in teens, the most common thing we typically see is just pressure and grades and keeping up with homework and the future and college and all of those things. So these are just basically, you know, the most common worries that we see. So I'll let y'all read through those, and then we'll go on to the next. Yes?
What about like, I have a middle schooler, he recently got a girlfriend.
Uh-huh.
Shopping.
Yes.
So there's a lot of anxiety there.
Yes.
Yeah, or if you're not very good at talking to girls. I was with a cute little, sophomore in high school, and like had a lot of anxiety because he's like, I'm not good with girls, and my other friends are, right? So it can go either way. Like I have that relationship, and I've got anxiety about maintaining that, or I'm not good at those kind of relationships, or even talking to somebody of the opposite sex.
Yeah, and we'll get into more. There's different types of anxiety, whether it's social or separation anxiety, OCD. There's a wide range of more clinical types of anxiety. But again, we wanted to start with kind of the most basic. But yes, peer relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend. So how do you address typical, or what we would say normal, worries or concerns? First of all, empathize with and validate your child's feeling. A lot of parents feel like validating is always agreeing with exactly whatever the emotion is. You can validate even if you feel like, or you don't understand the emotion. How many of you feel like it's hard to validate your kids' emotions or thoughts or feelings?
Yes, yeah, because especially if they don't make sense, right? If you're like, this does not, you know what worry I have to validate a lot, Paige? So I have a 4-year-old, and she asks me every night, literally, is the teacher gonna cough tomorrow? Because to her, that means, is my teacher gonna get sick and then leave, and I like my teacher being there, and that feels reliable and predictable, right? And so anyways, that is one, right? Like, oh, I can tell you're feeling a little bit worried about that. So I have to validate that one quite a bit.
Yeah.
Even though I want to like laugh, right?
With teens, it's a lot harder to know because sometimes they don't want you to know what they're feeling, or they want you to read their minds. So I think with teens, it's a lot harder to know, and so you throw a lot of things out there. Hey, think you're feeling worried because, I think just throwing out a lot of options, I feel like teens will they'll correct you. They may not give you information on their own, but they will always correct you. So we have the example. Sarah, it sounds like you're feeling a little worried, and then really normalizing. I think for kids and teens that I see, they really want to know that you understand, or that you've been there, or you've experienced some version of that feeling in the past. So I think the more that you can model for them your own feelings, your own self-talk, I'm feeling a little frustrated because we're stuck in traffic. I mean, things that are very basic, but I think for kids, just learning even what self-talk is and how you're feeling and regulating emotions. So, biggest thing, validate their feeling. Help your child remember their past successes. We spend a lot of time in therapy working on just exactly this, remembering times they were brave. And it doesn't have to be just the successes. The times when they tried something they were scared of, or they pushed through even when they didn't know that they could do it. And so this one to me is huge, just reminding them of all the past achievements. Lastly, helping them to see their anxious thoughts in a different way. One of the best things for kids is to ask them, well, what would you tell a friend if they came to you and they were feeling worried about asking the teacher a question in class? So helping them understand from another kid's perspective. Do you have an example for that one?
Yeah, helping them see it in a different way. So yeah, their friend is a great, I think that's a great example of that. What do you think your mom would say? Because sometimes they know you guys would go, hey, what, that's okay, you tried your hardest and you did your best and that's what we want for you, right? So usually an outside voice just helps them, helps them see it more flexibly. Or if you did this, what's the worst thing that could happen? Usually then you can follow that up with, and would you live through it, right? Sometimes they can give you a pretty good worst case scenario. They're like, I fall on my face in front of the whole school. Is that what you want from me, Mom? No. But would you live through that? Yeah, yes, I would. It would be embarrassing for a couple days, and everyone would forget about it, right?
Yeah. And I think, what's the worst case? Is it likely to happen? Is a good follow-up too, because a lot of times it's obviously, like 10% chance of happening. So with kids, it's just, how likely is it to happen? Okay, encourage positive coping skills. This to me, again, is the biggest thing that you can do for your kids, is model your own emotions and how you manage your own anxiety. Because I think what we see the most is kids are feeding off of however your day is going or how you're feeling. So positive coping, I like to use the acronym DRAFT, and it's just 5 basic coping skill categories. So the first is distractions, helping them know that sometimes if your mind is flooded, you're overwhelmed, you just need to distract for a little bit. That could be reading a book, that could be watching TV for a minimal amount of time, that could be anything that they do that they enjoy to distract. The second is relaxation. So do they need to take a shower, take a bath, go for a walk, light a candle, whatever makes them feel relaxed. The A is active. So getting outside, jumping on the trampoline, going for a run, bike ride. The F is faith. And that for them is just really incorporating prayer, Bible study, where are they getting fed throughout the week, spiritually, or what can they do in the moment to connect with God and remember some of the verses about worries. And then the T is talk to. So who do they have to talk to when they feel overwhelmed or stressed? So that to me is helpful for any kid or teen. Again, it can go from 5 all the way up to 18, or adults, just knowing kind of a balance of those 5 categories. Encouraging your child to face their worries. I think the hardest thing as a parent is wanting to do things to help children and do them for them maybe faster and easier. It's so hard to let them face worries. Even as a counselor, it's hard to push sometimes, but that is how
it's how they gain the confidence, right,
Yeah.
that they need. Is they have to do hard things, they have to do challenging things, and when we do it for them, or maybe we come in and take it away from them, we really rob them of that experience of conquering it, of being brave, of being resilient, being confident. So that's really, really important. And it's just really easy for us as adults to do to kids.
Yeah. And that's really where the learning takes place. So we can work in counseling, or you can even talk with them about different ways maybe they're, jumping to conclusions or thinking the worst case scenario. But the learning and the retraining of our brains really takes place when we do something and we sit in the discomfort and experience that anxiety and still push through. So I think for kids, even in small ways, pushing them to order their own food or to go to a sleepover if they're afraid, anything that's building, even like a gradual hierarchy of working at building confidence over time. Engage in taking good care of yourself and your own anxiety. As we've already said, anxiety is contagious. You can feel it in a room. So modeling for them. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Paige.
No, I was just gonna say modeling your own positive coping.
Yeah, sorry, I jumped in too fast. I think this one is really important. So the research really shows, and I hate this, like I'm a mom too, right? But mom's anxiety really impacts kids. So I always tell a parent, because sometimes they'll come back in and maybe before the appointment or after the appointment, they'll kind of talk about how they're feeling and how they're feeling about the situation with their kiddo. And I talk to them a lot about how, hey, this is actually really important. I'm so glad you stopped and talked to me about this. It's really important that you're taking good care of yourselves, because you can't enter into a situation with them and help them deal with their own worries, their own fears, if you're just kind of like flooded with your own and not doing well with your own. And they just pick up on, like even if you're kind of white knuckling it through, like, okay, I'm having the right conversation, I'm using all those words that Paige and Cristina talked about, but they feel, because they are, right, like you guys are bonded, they get what your real emotion is. You cannot hide it, trust me, I'm trying. Like, they get it. So, it's okay to sometimes say, hey, I'm feeling anxious about this too, and that's why later on I'm gonna go for a walk, or that's why, I've been talking to Dad about it, or that's why, I'm talking to my counselor about it, right? Like, that's all really positive modeling for them, because they get it. They can feel your anxiety, right?
Yeah, they feel it, and sometimes they misinterpret it. I did something wrong, I'm upsetting Mom or Dad. We see a lot of that where they take on pure stress themselves and take it out. Okay, so when should you be worried? When does it go from typical normal worries into something more concerning? So I would say the biggest factor, kind of sleep, appetite, when their anxiety is persistent and it's lasting longer and they're having a harder time coming out of some of the negative thoughts, and it starts to impact, just normal functioning, especially sleep and appetite. That is kind of a sign. And again, if it's pervasive over time, if you see a significant change in their grades or overall performance, a change, in their ability to do things. So with anxiety, the biggest thing we see is avoidance. And obviously, if they don't feel confident or ready to do something, then they avoid. And then that can lead to more avoidance of school or social events or birthday parties. So I think when it's more pervasive and any of these other additional signs.
Yeah, and the one thing we can't do that we all want to do, right? Because sometimes, they're talking about like, I'm so worried about having a date to this dance. Like, what do we all want to respond with? Don't worry, it'll be fine. Everybody likes you. That doesn't help, right? So just kind of remembering that empathic part of what we were talking about with validation. I think that's so important. And then if you really see this pervasive pattern in its impacting functioning, then that's a really good time to talk about getting some outside help.
So we know that anxiety disorders affect 1 in 8 children. Anxiety is actually very treatable with cognitive behavioral therapy or various types of therapy. There are many steps to working through, exposure work, which helps kids gradually face fears over time. So it's very treatable. However, only 1/3 of those suffering receive treatment. Untreated anxiety will often cause poor school performance, missing out on social experiences, and oftentimes we see it shift to depression. If a child has had anxiety over a long period of time and it's untreated, then they just give up. They just shut down, and it can turn into depression. So why has this happened? We know anxiety is a complex set of factors: genetics, brain chemistry, personality, life events. And like Cristina said, I think early childhood especially, parent stress impacts anxiety so much. As kids are learning how to cope, they're learning how to think, they're learning how to respond to events, they're feeding off of how you respond to events and respond to them. Their core beliefs are being developed. What do I mean to my mom or to the world? And so I think for especially the early childhood, it's so important to model for them that it's okay to feel nervous and it's okay to feel worried. We all feel worried and anxious at times, and then model for them how you work through your own anxiety and fears and self-talk. When anxiety becomes more pervasive and it's impacting functioning, that is when typically parents will reach out to Sparrow House or to counseling or professional help. Like I said, there's research-based therapeutic treatments that are very effective. And I think I would love to know from you guys, what's kind of a sign in some of your children or teens? Does anyone have an example of where you're unsure if it's normal or if it's kind of crossing the line? Yes.
3-year-old every morning says she doesn't want to go to school.
Okay.
And then goes to school and seems to be fine, but always says she doesn't want to go.
That's a great example because with school refusal, I think that I love the age example, but also, wait, do you want to cover that one?
You said 3-year-old, is that Yeah, so I think what's great in that situation is she's going to school. Okay, so I think it crosses the line when you're like, we can like physically put her in the car and she's kicking and screaming, but if she were 9, we'd be in trouble. That would be a sign. This kind of sounds like, hey, I've got some mild anxiety about going to school. And there's a lot that goes into a school day that I think we forget as adults. Anyone's school day, whether it's very little to teenagers, there's a social component. I got to get along with other people. I have to be on good behavior, right? I don't want to get in trouble. I have to follow directions. I have to do stuff I don't want to do, right? Lots of things that go on during school that are, they are stressful, right? So there's a lot happening. So yeah, if she really started to be like, I'm not going, I don't want to go, and you're kind of dragging, kicking and screaming, and you kind of imagine in your head, wow, she's 15, she wouldn't be going to school right now. That's to me when it kind of crosses over. And remember, anxiety, right? It's on a spectrum, and I think I like to explain it to people, and I'm going to use the old volume for you guys. I work with teenagers and kids, and if I start doing this, they're like, the knob, they're like lost, right? I have to do this, but I'm going to do the knob for you guys, because I like the knob better. But the knob, when it gets turned up too high, that's when the anxiety becomes a problem. And turning up too high is kind of that stuff of like, I'm not going to go to school, I'm not going to go to the birthday party, I'm not going to, play the sport that I used to play because it's making me feel anxious and nervous, And so when it's up that loud, like we kind of talked about before, then our job is we just teach them tools to help crank down that volume. It's a beautiful thing, and that's why it's so treatable. It responds really well to treatment. So anyways, and then you sometimes get, we didn't talk about this, but with anxiety, sometimes those headaches, stomach aches, if you feel like you're getting those, or the school is calling you, well, they're in the nurse's office again, right? That's kind of an indicator, okay, there's a lot of anxiety. When that's happening a lot and they're missing a lot of school time, again, that volume's too loud, we gotta just turn it down a bit. And that's all we're doing. And what's great for kids and adolescents, I've had parents before say, okay, you're gonna go tell this person you don't know at all your deepest, darkest secrets. And I was like, no, that's not actually what you're doing. And the kid looks at me like, that's what I'm gonna be doing with you? I don't even know you, right? That's not what we're doing. We're actually teaching them tools. I always tell people it's more like learning math. Tools and steps to help turn down that volume. And we have a different type of treatment for younger kids. It's like for 3 to 7-year-olds that really, it's if you have an anxious preschooler, it's not play therapy, it's called PCIT. It's really also effective for anxious kids, and it really teaches the parent how to help regulate the child. So that one's a little different, so I'm just gonna throw it out there. Other questions that you guys have about anxiety before we go into depression? So there's different normal periods of time. Just one more little fact out here. So beginning of the school year, usually there's some anxiety. You know, I kind of compare it, it's like getting a new boss. Changes. I recently had a friend call me and she's like, oh my gosh, my son doesn't want to go to school. He said he's afraid of throwing up. Well, his teacher's going out on maternity leave. So he's about to have a new teacher he doesn't know, right? So any kind of transition, and that's actually a big transition. New teacher, I think you think new boss, new rules, like how do we all feel when we get a new boss? We're a little bit worried. We're like, we don't know this boss. We don't know how this boss is gonna be. What if the same things I used to be able to do don't fly anymore, right? So anyways, I think that's an important thing to know too, is transitional periods. You can see more anxiety that's just normal, right? Okay, y'all are an easy group. I guess I will go on to depression here. So we'll go on to the next one. So, sorry, go back. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Okay, so I think what's really important is that it doesn't make us feel good, but kids can just be sad about things just like we can all be sad, right? There are normal things that happen that make us feel sad. A good friend moves away. It's always hard if you have a kiddo, and especially maybe your kiddo has a very particular kind of personality, so they don't have 25 million friends, and so when their best friend moves, that's a hard thing, right? And they're sad, and they're probably sad for a while, right? A big one that can make kids feel sad, especially teens and like junior high kids, and even like elementary, being excluded from a group, right? There's something going on with, and I'm gonna use girls as an example because this happens a lot more with girls. But there's like a group. I even had one time, y'all, this will blow your mind. This was the example. So it was a bunch of girls that got together and they wanted to do something nice for the groundskeeper at the school. And they excluded half the girls. They were like, oh, only this group is gonna be doing this nice service project for him, right? So this can come in all forms is my point. It doesn't have to look like super mean girl.
And especially with social media and then looking and comparing on Instagram and seeing who's doing what.
Yeah, exactly. Now. Can you imagine if you were in high school, we heard about it. We were like, okay, yeah, I wasn't invited to that thing. Now you can actually see it and it looks like everyone's having the best time of their lives. That's crazy. That's so hard, right? Or I think about, anybody here have kids that are going to college or, okay, thank you in the back. So I'm gonna just bring this one up because it's a great example. So your first semester freshman year at college, I think that's hard, right? Mm-hmm. Paige and I actually went to college together, fun fact. So anyways, it's a hard semester. I don't think it's easy. Now, if you looked at these Instagram posts of these college girls the first semester, you would think it was like the time of their lives, right? And that's what they're seeing about each other. So that's hard, and that's typical sadness or struggle is that first semester, right? Or, maybe they didn't go to college and they're starting a job, right? And so their life looks different than other people's. Not making a team, it's really hard now. Some of these schools, you're like, okay, I'm either gonna go play Major League Baseball or I'll make my high school baseball team, right? Literally, that's how good you have to be at this stuff. So making the team is hard in middle school. I was with a girl today, she's so nervous about 7th grade cheer tryouts, and they actually have a cut, okay? It's not just a sign-up sheet. and they actually have to do stuff. She was explaining it to me, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a real tryout. So not making a team, that's hard. A breakup, oh my gosh, that is extreme sadness, right? That first breakup when you're in high school, not so much middle school, but high school, and you've actually it's not like you've just texted each other, but where you've actually had some type of a relationship with somebody, that's really, that is you think your life is ending, right? That is painful. The death in the family, obviously, kids get sad about not doing as well as they went to in school. And then, there can be some sadness about transitions because maybe they're really sad about leaving the teacher they loved, or maybe they're moving from one school to the middle school or to the high school in the same district, but still that's hard to leave the school where they felt good. Now, go to the next one. So addressing typical sadness. So this is not a lot different than anxiety, so that's good news. I will tell you that I think the parent fear in validating the emotion is when somebody is really sad. I think you can go, I think I'm gonna make them feel worse if I'm like, yeah, I know that really sucks. I think that's the fear, right? That then they're gonna just sink lower and lower and lower. But what actually happens if somebody validates your feelings? Does somebody share with me what that's like for them? You feel better, you feel normal, yeah. It feels like it's gonna be okay, right? One of my partners at the office, and Paige can tell you, he is like so validating. Like, you go in and you're like, this made me so mad, and he goes, I know. He'll even like do that, I know. And you walk away and you're like, oh, I feel a lot better, now I can go on with life, and it's not as big of a deal anymore. So that validation tool is really, really powerful. And even if you get the feeling wrong, it's okay, they're gonna correct you, and that's fine. No, I didn't feel sad, I felt angry. Okay, I get it, you felt angry, right? They just wanna feel understood. Being available, that's really helpful to addressing sadness. Being available, being in tune. Hey, I can tell it's been a hard day. If you want to talk about it later, let me know. If not, that's cool, right? Especially with a teenager. I don't know if y'all saw this on, it was like, I think Tina Fey was like on Jimmy Fallon, and she was so funny. She was like, you know, having a teenager is like a guy that you have a crush on, and you're like, hey, so a bunch of us are eating in the kitchen later. I mean, you don't have to come, but if you wanted to, that'd be great. That's kind of what you're doing here with your, right, with being available. Like, hey, if you wanted to talk to me later, that'd be cool. If not, I mean, you're just like easy breezy about it. It's kind of a good way to be. And then this is a big one, and this is so hard as a parent, is listening to them and not trying to fix it. Okay, because like in reality, if they're having trouble with friends, can you fix it? No, right? They've got to figure it out. And that's so hard, and it's really hard because we just feel like if we fixed it, they'd feel better. And what do we want at the end of the day? We want them to be able to feel better, right? Again, encourage positive coping skills. So, and modeling those for your children. You know, I have what we know from the research is that children learn how to cope from their parents. So I've had different situations in my office that have been really funny in some ways. So I had a mom who was like, she gets sad and she just goes to her bed and then she's like, on her phone and like, I can't believe this is not helping, And the teenager, and this is why I love working with teenagers and parents, the teenager turns to her mom and goes, when you get sad, you get in your bed for hours, right? So they learn this is frightening, but they learn how to cope from us. So really working on your own positive coping and taking good care of yourself, that's really going to be one of the best things for them in learning what to do with emotions, okay? Because it's confusing. When you have a lot of emotions, it's confusing to know what to do with them, right? And what we have to remember about children and teenagers is they don't have that developed frontal lobe, right? So their emotions are really big. So if they say to you, it was the saddest, worst, most awful thing ever, and then I had a panic attack, they're just trying to communicate the intensity, okay? It's something, because sometimes that can feel like drama, and what they're really trying to communicate is like, this was a really big deal to me. That's the translation, right? So it's just kind of important to understand that their experience of emotion is bigger because they don't have their frontal lobe, which is regulating emotion yet. So that's why the teenagers can be tricky. Even with kids, same thing. Okay.
One thing I was going to add, so a lot of kids or teens that I work with feel like within their family maybe that it's not okay to be sad or sadness is not shown. And so again, I said earlier, I think it's so important to model. God made us with a full range of emotions and they all have a purpose and a job. And so I think just normalizing sadness that you feel and then making it okay within your family, it's okay. It's hard to sit with a crying teenager or a crying child. And I think depression and sadness in general is harder to just sit with and not do anything. And validating is what's going to help your child or teen the most. Otherwise, they just continue to try to express it in other ways. So I think that really just showing them all emotions are okay, God made us that way, and allowing them to express them without the jumping in and needing to rescue or fix.
And I really want y'all to be talking to them about this, because do you know where they're actually getting their information about emotions? Where where are you guys guessing?
Internet.
TikTok.
Yeah.
TikTok
Yeah.
is teaching them how to do life. Okay, this is very concerning. Yeah, it said they learned 90, it's like 87% of them look up depression, anxiety, fitness. Like, so it's basically like health-related behaviors. So this is where they're going. And I'm not saying everything on TikTok's bad. Like, some of it's really funny, some of it's really true, but some of it is not good. And they're gonna have trouble at times discerning that, right? Because they're trying to figure it out. So that's why your conversations on this are so important. Okay, so this is like the common question, you know, that's so important is, okay, when should I be worried? Like, when is this a problem? What I would say is depression, we cannot let this go on and on. Okay, like anxiety, I joke, I'm like, anxiety kind of works for people, like you get a lot of stuff done, maybe your energy is like a little crazy and bothers people at times, but it kind of works, right? You're productive, you do things. Depression does not work for anybody. And the problem is with teenagers is that they can kind of slip really fast into a really hopeless place. So we really, when we notice that like, wow, this seems more like depression, it's really important that we do something about that. You know, in a first step, if you're like, I don't know if it is or it isn't, call your pediatrician, take them into your pediatrician. That's your easiest person sometimes to talk to about it. They're gonna be the most helpful in being able to assess and help you figure out some next steps. Maybe get connected with people like us. Okay, so this is what I want to mention with I'm going to talk a little bit about teenagers, and we'll talk about kids, because kids get depressed too. Teenagers do not look like depressed middle-aged women that are crying in their bed and can't get up in the morning, okay? So we just got to that's not how it's going to look. It's going to look like irritability, moodiness, like more, and I know you're going to be like, hi, that's my teenager on a regular basis, and I don't think they're depressed. Right, it's kind of like more than that, where you're like, wow, I can't say anything at all to them. Like, it's not working. They're very irritable. They're very moody. Academic difficulties, so you'll see sometimes a letter grade drop in grades. They may tell you it's really hard to focus. They feel kind of like cloudy and things feel foggy. More conflict with parents, more conflict with their friends, you know? Because when kids are really depressed, it's global, right? So they're doing some of this stuff with their friends too, which is unusual. Isolating from the family. Now, I know you're gonna be like, hey, listen, Cristina, they're in their room for 2 hours. I can't get them out. What are you talking about? But like where the isolation is longer periods of time, you're like, on a Saturday, I don't think I saw them at all, right? So isolation is one of the first symptoms sometimes you'll see in a teen. And that they want to spend time alone. Like they just seem very like, that's what they want to do. They don't want to be around friends. They're not, when friends are asking them to do stuff, they're not wanting to do stuff. Obviously changes in appetite, so eating more, eating less, or changes in weight. And then difficulty falling asleep or waking up in the middle of the night, just difficulty with their sleep patterns. And they seem down, or moody or sad, and you don't see them bounce back up. You know, it wasn't like, okay, they got mad or sad or down about one thing and then they kind of came out of it, like they kind of just stay that way. So those are all signs.
I think also in kids, depression can show up, and I know you were going to get to that, but show up as anger, just extreme anger outbursts versus just sadness. I think it's harder to read sometimes with little kids, especially, through elementary age. Usually it can present as anger and frustration more so than sadness. So.
Yeah, I think it's just to the point of that kids can be depressed, and that's just good to know. And that happens, and we see that in our office. So to just know that, because I think sometimes we think of teenagers, but we don't think of kids, but it can definitely happen to kids too. And Paige did a good job describing that. And then 1 in 4 adolescents struggle with depression, so that's hard, that's high. And then here's kind of our rate in kids, that 2.5%. And I think, one of the things is a lot of teens, when they get depressed, they do start to have suicidal thoughts. That's pretty common. So again, that's why we really want to be on top of treating this, because, any type of a suicidal thought is not something that we want to stick around, right? Okay, and so here's some facts about suicide. What I can just tell you is the suicide rates are just kind of increasing in our younger kid age group, which is concerning, our like 8, 9, 10, in our teens, and obviously third leading cause of death. So it's like car accidents, and then it's like suicide practically. So it's just a real problem. The year that's really sensitive is 9th grade. So that's just kind of, that makes sense. That's a huge transitional year. So that's just something to know. Okay, we can kind of go on from there. So one thing I want to just put out there, if you are worried that your child's having suicidal thoughts, I feel like parents have a pretty good gut read on their kids, you know, right? You're paying attention, you're invested, you're here tonight, right? And so if you're feeling like, hey, I think they might be having some suicidal thoughts, ask them. You will not put the idea into their mind. If they have had any good friends die by suicide, you're going to want to ask them, because that's a sensitive time. So that's really important. They obviously, like, you know, self-harm, you know, that's anything from, you know, cutting, those kind of behaviors. You're going to want to ask about that. That doesn't necessarily mean suicide, but that could, so you got to ask about that. And obviously if they've told you, like, oh, I did this to myself, like they let you know, or I'm thinking about doing this, then you got to take that really seriously. And you go, okay, thanks for letting me know, and then you take them to children's and you have them assessed. You know, that's what you do, and that's okay, and that's really important. I don't find that teenagers give us a lot of notice about this. Like, I don't think they sit down and they make arrangements, right? So yes, that can happen. I would not say that that's typical. They can also, you know, make statements about suicide, and you're always going to ask, are you feeling like hurting yourself, or are you just trying to tell me that you're really upset or you're really frustrated? It's good to ask that question, right? Because sometimes, again, like we talked about, they'll express things in certain words. And then the follow-up thing is, okay, if you're really feeling this way, then we need to go to the hospital, right? Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. So suicide is highly heritable. So if you have a family member that's genetically related to you that's died by suicide, that's a much greater risk factor. And so that's just kind of good to know. And why does depression happen, or suicide? So it's, you know, again, as in mental health, it's a complex set of factors. Whenever somebody asks me, and they usually want to know, is this one thing, because then I won't do that one thing, or I'll make sure my child does not do that one thing. And it's not how it works. It's complicated. So it's this set of genetics, of brain chemistry, of personality, of different life events, right? That all come together and they form this perfect storm, and then we have some of the challenges that we see in kids and teenagers. Okay, and this just kind of walks through what I told you about, you know, just kind of staying calm, asking, hey, are you having thoughts about hurting yourself? That's usually how I ask the question.
I think too, just to add on to how valuable it is that they've shared with you, I think it's so important. You know, a lot of kids try expressing maybe that they're having suicidal thoughts to a parent, and then the parent kind of overreacts, and then they shut down and they, you know, tell us, well, I'm never going to tell them again because this and that. So I think it's really important that you ask them directly, but also, you know, thank you so much for letting me know, I'm here for you, letting them know how, you know, how important it is that they can share with you and continue to be open and have conversation, because I know it's an uncomfortable topic and thing to hear, but I think it's so important. So many of the teens that I see completely stop sharing, you know, anything related to self-harm or suicide because of a past reaction they've gotten from a parent. And so I think I always, you know, hope that you're the first person that they are going to and telling that they're having those thoughts. So.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Paige, and really focusing. I know this is hard because some people react to fear differently. So you know yourself, like how you react to fear. So some people react to fear and it looks like anger, so they get angry. So, you know, their child's like, yeah, you know, I've been thinking about hurting myself. Is this because you've been hanging out with John? I told you John was a bad influence. That's not helpful in that moment. John may be a very bad influence, but in that moment, again, going back to, hey, I'm so glad you told me this. And now you have some words around that, so you can just even repeat that, even though you may feel like, I'm not very glad that you told me this. In fact, I don't really want to hear this right now. but I do want to help you and I do want to be in it with you, right? That's the idea. I don't like it when kids tell me to this day, you know, I've done this for 20 years and I've done a lot of suicide assessment because I've worked in hospital settings, and I don't like asking that question. It is not comfortable. I feel worried. I feel concerned. I feel sometimes even a little panicked when a kid tells me that, right? So, and it's not even my own child, right? So I get that this is really, really scary, but it's, at this point in time, it's really, really important to ask the question if you've got concerns, okay? And then listen, don't judge, that's, you know, a hard one. And then, you know, reassure them that you're gonna help them, that you're gonna support them, and then that they're not gonna feel like this forever, right? And if they're, you know, if they're even on somewhere in the spectrum of having these thoughts, obviously you're gonna take them to the hospital to have them assessed, but then you're gonna just have to provide a lot of supervision, right? You just, this is not when you can like, you know, go to Mexico on your trip that you've been really looking forward to, right? Even though I'm sure that would be helpful, but not at this time, right? And then just, if they are engaging in more self-harm, just work with them on removing whatever they're using to self-harm, so. Okay, so we do have research-based interventions, so treatments that we know that work on adolescent and child depression. So that's the good news. It's not like we don't know what to do. And then there is I forgot to put this on here, but I'll tell you guys, there is like a suicide hotline. I would make sure that if you've got a teenager, so let's call that 8th grade up, that you make sure it's in their phone, because even if it's not them, they're gonna have a friend that's gonna text them, or they're gonna see it on social media where somebody is thinking about hurting themselves, and they're gonna freak out and they're not gonna know what to do. And so you just, you know, have a short conversation. Hey, you know, lots of times kids your age have, you know, thoughts about hurting themselves. That just kind of happens because, you know, we live in a hard world, right? That's all true. So I want to make sure you got this number, this suicide hotline number, so that if in the future you were ever feeling this way, or, you know, or if they freak out, if you said that, you could just say, or if you had a friend feeling this way, you would know what to do. You could give them this number. And then just, you know, it's important, like they may say, don't tell dad or don't tell mom. And, you know, this is something that you have to make sure that both parents know about, and, you know, including in divorce cases, and even if the ex-person that's involved is not your favorite person. This is something that's like an all hands on deck kind of situation.
And sometimes even in that conversation, I mean, obviously get them assessed or in counseling, but sometimes it's helpful just to talk about what do they need in that moment. Some kids that I work with have a code word. They don't want to say, I'm having suicidal thoughts again. So, you know, they say I'm really stressed, or whatever they've already agreed upon. So I think it's, when the opportunity arises, talking through what your teen or what your child really needs from you in that moment. Do they need a hug? Do they need to talk through it? Do they need some time? And then talk through it. Safety is obviously the most important thing, so getting them assessed, yes.
So we have several of our volunteers in this room that serve in our kids and student ministry. So going back to the get help, I don't know if you have any advice for like verbiage, because, you know, often in teenagers kind of in that phase, or even preteens, where they don't want to talk to their parents, but they'll come to church and they'll talk to their small group leader because they trust them. And then they'll say, you can't tell my mom.
Yeah,
How
so
do we address that so the leaders feel confident that they aren't going to ruin their relationship with the kids in order to get the, you know, tell the parent something like this?
Yeah, that's so common. So sometimes they'll ask you, hey, if I tell you something, why have to tell my parent? And you go, I might. You know, most of the time they're gonna plow right through and tell you anyways, because if they're saying that, they're like ready to talk, right? Now, if they say it on the back end, you know, then you just say, hey, I know this is really hard to understand right now, but this is something we really need to let your mom or your dad, whoever, know about, you know? And you will break their trust, and there will be a rupture in that relationship. It just will be, but they may be alive. And I've had to do that too, where I had to tell parents, and I got a text that said, F you one time. I trusted you, and you told my parents. And this was, you know, somebody that needed to go to the hospital, and they did go to the hospital. And then later, you know, every time that's happened, that was a more extreme verbalization of how upset they were. But every time that's happened, the kids come back and they said, you know, I really needed to be there, thank you.
I think too, choices go a long way with teens. So usually I'll say, I care too much about you to not let your parents parents know this is a really big deal. Do you want me to talk to your parent, or do you want us to all talk together? So then they have some ownership over, am I the one that's in the meeting, even with the small group leader sharing, or is she sharing without me? Some teens are like, I do not want to be there, I want you to talk to her, and others, yes, want parent in. So I think choices in general go a long way with teens, and they feel a little bit more empowered, but yes, it is obviously something that you have to share with parents, just given the safety.
Yeah.
And then I think, as a volunteer, sitting with that teen and just letting them know, I think that's what's hard in the moment, for parents and for us, feeling helpless and not knowing what to say, and am I gonna say the right thing or the wrong thing? And really all they need for you to do is just be present, and if you don't know what to say, just, I'm here with you, I'm right here, I think that just your presence is really all they need in that moment. So that to me is so important, that other than feeling like you have to say the right thing or do the right thing. I think a lot of parents shut down and have no words, and that's even scarier for kids because they're feeling judged, or what are they thinking? So I think just verbalizing, I'm here with you, I'm so sorry that you're feeling this way, maybe expressing a time when you were sad, just connecting with them in any way that you can.
Yeah, that's important. And if you've been through, and I am sure, looking at the room, nobody in here is 12 years old. You've been through something hard, something really hard in your life, and you know what? You oftentimes you knew that nobody could really do anything to make that situation better. But what helped you, right, was to know you weren't alone. And that's what you're trying to kind of give them, is like, hey, you're not alone, I'm here. And that goes really far with people, really, really far. I mean, that's at different points in our job, that's literally what our job is, right? Is like, this is really hard and I'm here with you in it, right? You don't have to do it alone. And that's powerful.
And I think just to add on to the connecting is important, also asking the hard questions, do you have a plan? If you're the youth leader or the one that the kid is opening up to, I think assessing as best as you can, do you have a plan? Some teenagers have suicidal thoughts and they have no intention, it's just a horrible day and I want to die, I want to disappear, I want to run away. And so I think, you're still going to tell parents either way, but I think distinguishing for them, some kids are just afraid. They had this thought and then they're terrified. And so I think helping them know, life is hard, we all feel this way sometimes, but distinguishing for them, if they have a plan, then it's really a situation where they need to go to the hospital versus I'm having some thoughts throughout the week, when life is hard and things are difficult, so.
Yeah, that's a great point. So these are some general parenting books. Okay, so these are not books that I wrote. So you may not agree, even if I wrote the book, you might not agree with everything in the book, okay? And some of them are not necessarily Christian books, but they're books with good ideas. They're books that have some science behind them. I think you have to be careful with parenting books, because sometimes it's like, it can be someone who maybe was a really great parent, or maybe had really easy kids, and then they're writing a book that really applies to like this portion of people, right? I like these because they typically apply to like a wider audience. Some of them are written by psychologists, mental health professionals, so that's helpful too. And we'll go on to the next slide because I think we have some just resources. So one I wanted to highlight here is effectivechildtherapy.org. That's a great site for, you can search by the concern you have, and it shows you what type of therapy would be helpful for your child. It shows you if you have questions about, I talked to someone and they wanted to do neurofeedback for depression. Well, that's not evidence-based for depression, and there you can kind of see that. Now, it may not help, it may not, harm someone, it just may not be that helpful, and that's what that kind of goes to, because I know it can get confusing, because unfortunately people, they can kind of put maybe their own self-interest in making money over what's helpful to everybody, right? And so there's things, maybe by not even mental health professionals, that are out there that have claims that this will fix this or fix that. And when you're in a desperate place, it's really easy to, do those things, right? So anyways, that's a really helpful, really good website. Okay, questions. We're just opening it up now to general questions. Got two professionals here. don't be shy. Somebody else probably
It
has
doesn't
the same
have to be
question.
just anxiety or depression. Any questions? Yes.
Yes.
Is there data that shows that anxiety and sadness is higher than it was 20, 30 years
Yes.
ago?
The answer is yes. It's higher than it was in 2010. So yeah.
Is it because of social media? Is that a factor?
Social media is a factor. COVID is a factor. You know, when kids, because you know, kids are developing, so their developmental stages are really important. So you know, when people ask me, you know, I didn't like love COVID, right? But I would say, you know, it didn't have this pervasive impact on my life because I'm already a fully developed person. It didn't impact my work negatively, as you guys can imagine. And you know, I like had enough space in my home. Like there's a lot of factors, right, that protected me from some of it. When you talk to kids, they know exactly what year it happened, and they can tell you exactly how it was weird for their life.
And
Right.
especially the littles. I mean, they really missed out on social interactions and facial expressions. And so I feel like, saw a lot more OCD, separation anxiety, social anxiety, just situations that they, you know, lost kind of 2 years in.
Yeah, where I'll have a lot of like, you know, 15, 16-year-olds, the moms and dads will be like, you know, I was watching them interact, it kind of looks like 7th graders. Makes sense, right? 7th or 8th graders makes sense, like that delay. So yeah, it was really hard on college kids. Like, I mean, it was really hard. And I think most of us know in our lives, like we just have family members that maybe health-wise did okay, but did not fare well from a psychological perspective. So I think it's all, you know, I think it's all those things. And again, I think most things in our field, it's not just one thing, it's usually this combination of factors. But that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. Yes.
How would you describe how the parent can help set up a child socially so that they're not isolated? I feel like it's really important for kids to have friends.
Yes.
And when I hear, you know, a family that a child doesn't have any friends, I say it's up to the parent to make sure they have a couple of buddies. What would you say about that?
Yeah, so what's a little tricky is you kind of need to know what's going on, right? Like, what's the problem? Like, so for some kids, they've been bullied. So now they're just kind of afraid, right? Like, they've not like, I got in a fight with someone and I called it bullying, but like, they've really been bullied. So they've had really negative experiences with peers. So then it's hard to get back out there, right? Put themselves out there. So that can be one thing. They can have social anxiety. So literally, it's hard for me to think of things to say and carry on conversations. So it's hard for me to make friends. You know, it can be, they have been dealing with some mental health stuff, and so they don't have a lot of interest, and it's very difficult to hang out with friends. You know, some kids that are really, you know, I don't know how to say it differently, they're just socially awkward and kind of quirky, so their group of people they can connect with is just much more narrow, right? So there can be there's just a lot of different reasons. There can be, you know, they may need a little bit of assistance, to your point. So it might be, you know, when I have pretty typical kids, they don't have a ton of social anxiety, they're having a hard time connecting with friends. You know, I'll talk to parents about being like, okay, tell them they can invite whoever they want over and you'll order pizza, right? Food is usually a good one, right? To encourage kids, or sometimes like fun experiences, like grab a buddy and we'll go do this fun thing, you know, because then sometimes you can help them see that, you know, somebody might be interested that's a friend that can come along that's to kind of help build that friendship, you know. So helping them identify who are the people that could be possible friends, that's what I was calling possible. Like, you don't have to decide they're gonna be your really good friend, but they could be possible. Like, you know, you kind of talk through the classes that they're in with those people or the activities they're in. And a lot of kids make friends based on activities. So if they're not really involved in activities, then that might be another great way to help them, you know, engage in friendships.
Yeah, and just, you know, having clubs, I mean, again, any activities, shared activities that they love, but just having conversations with them about their friend. You know, who's a person at school that you feel really good when you're around them? They're encouraging, they're uplifting. You know, some kids, I feel like, are easily, you know, they don't know exactly the first friend that comes along they connect with. And so a lot of kids just need help navigating what makes a good friend, what makes a bad friend. But I agree, at the early ages, they really do need a lot of help initially in connecting, and whether that's you finding a club or setting up a play date, or hey, let's meet at the park, you know, just natural help for, you know, I'd say up until, you know, 5th and 6th grade, and 7th and 8th grade, they start to get a little, I want want to do my own thing. So I think it depends on the age as well, but I do think early on, it's kind of with anything else, you know, you're modeling and helping them out and then kind of stepping back and more of like a coach kind of role.
Yeah, like you think of with those littles, they need coaching through the social situations, right? Like I have a 4-year-old, she was in her class, was kind of the girl dynamic was a little bit tricky, and she's sort of describing that to me. And so, you know, somebody was saying mean things to her, and I was like, okay, well, what do you say back to them when they say this, right? I don't like them. Please don't say that to me. You know, so they just need some of that when they're, you know, that's kind of the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you see that they can they're kind of getting there where they're doing a little bit more of that on their own. So I think asking some good, like, curious questions about what's going on, that'll kind of help you. Because what I find is sometimes parents in those early years kind of rush too fast to, like, for a solution. And then they sort of miss a little bit of what the kid's saying, because some of these social situations are kind of nuanced. And so you kind of really have to be like, okay, let me totally understand what's going on. Plus, they're not able to describe it to you super well. Like my 4-year-old's pretty verbal, but she was saying like, well, this girl's cute, but sometimes she says she doesn't want to play with me, but I would want to play with her. I don't understand why she doesn't want to play with me. So what she was kind of saying to me is like what an older kid might describe of like, hey, we look the same, we seem like we would want to do this, why doesn't she want to play with me? This is confusing, right? And so sometimes you have to kind of really interpret what they might really be trying to communicate.
And some kids really need practical, some kids that I see don't know what to say to a kid at school. And so we'll brainstorm, okay, spring break's coming up. What are you gonna do for spring break? Some kids really need help just navigating what to actually say. I think carpooling is a great time for you to observe, what their interactions are like, if there's a friend that lives nearby, and to kind of help them out, in navigating those, but yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I think what we've seen it here in kids ministry and stuff too is particularly post-COVID, if you look at a 4, 5, or 6-year-old, literally half of their life they were isolated.
Yeah.
And they didn't have practice in learning those social encounters.
Mm-hmm.
So having to just in the classroom or whatever say, hey, let's talk. We don't say things like that. Where you're coaching, like you said, to really learn how to have a relationship, because a lot of them missed a lot of that development based on being isolated at home or whatever. And that's for us, it's like 2 years, when you're in cookies.
Maybe we came out of it a little weird, but we're okay. It's not that bad.
It's not really that long in our perspective.
Yeah.
But when you're only 4 or 5,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
it's literally half your life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And early on, teaching them what they're misperceiving. We do very basic thinking traps. Oh, disaster Daryl thinks the worst, negative Nina thinks only about the bad stuff. But I think navigating for them how they're misperceiving situations socially, or reading someone's mind, thinking someone hates them when actually that person has a headache or is sick. So I think talking through those things, well, maybe it was this, or maybe it was this, instead of just a very rigid mindset on situations.
That was a great question. Other questions? Yes.
How do you prepare a child for a big move that's going to change school districts?
Yeah, I think, if you can, I know sometimes you can't, but if you're able to kind of show them maybe where they're going to be, this is where your school's going to be, sometimes just seeing stuff helps, because their children are more concrete, so they can actually see this is where I'm going, this is where we're going to be living. If you can't take them, then maybe pictures kind of help. And then, I think to kind of prepare them, at first it might be, you're going to be in a new place, and you may feel kind of worried about that, and how will this new place be? And you kind of talking through that and the feelings that they're having about that, I think that's great. What else would you say?
Yeah, this is an opportunity to be brave, kind of, I don't know what age is the kid? 9, okay, so kind of, times that she's been scared of something in the past, she or he have been scared of things in the past, and really presenting it as an opportunity to show bravery and courage, and yes, I think that showing steps along the way, preparing them for what they might feel is helpful. And if you've had an experience, a big change, I think that's always helpful, sharing in an age-appropriate way a time when you experienced a big change.
You mentioned OCD earlier. How how do you kind of differentiate warning signs of OCD versus just, I'm a preschooler and I can't regulate myself and I really want to stay?
Yeah, and preschoolers like are more repetitive by nature.
Yeah.
And that's something like developmentally, like they may go and play with the same things, they like routine. That's a typical kind of developmental point. And so, how would you?
I mean, it's pretty rare. I mean, it happens, but it's more rare for that age to be diagnosed with OCD because there's so many different things that it could be. Emotion regulation, it could be anxiety, it could be a habit. I mean, even if a kid has a tic, they don't even consider it a tic for like longer than a year. So I think at that age, it's still kind of navigating what's going on. As they get older, it's the repetitive behaviors, intrusive thoughts, you know, really the connection of anxious thought, do something to make the thought go away, that cycle.
Yeah, but some of it I think you just have to be careful because in that stage they are repetitive, they
Mhm.
are rule bound, they like routines, and that's all normal. That's the kind of stuff that helps them like feel safe. No, I have seen it. We have seen it in 5-year-olds.
Yeah.
You know, for sure. And we've had it. You know, kids where that's
Yeah.
exactly what was going on. So I'm not saying it doesn't occur, but that's when the differentiation between typical development versus atypical is really important.
Mm-hmm.
If you have those kind of concerns, you're just not sure, a pediatrician's a great person. You know, if you feel like you've got a really good pediatrician, which hopefully if they're your pediatrician, you feel like they're a really good one. They're a great resource because that's what they're trained to do, is kind of figure out when might you need to go see a specialist. When is this kind of outside of a developmental norm? So it's always okay to call them and make an appointment for this kind of stuff. I think sometimes people, I can fall into this, you kind of think about the year checkup, you know, or after they're not babies anymore, we're not checking on the developmental milestones, and we just see them once a year. But if you've got these kind of concerns, they're a great place to start. Yes.
Kind of similar to Troy's question, my daughter is 7 and she's going to a different school next year, and like, she knows she's going to that school. She's not really worried about it yet, but I just know that just how she's wired, she's probably gonna be a little bit nervous, so.
Yeah.
I'm trying to take like some proactive steps to talk about worry and anxiety and things that I feel like will probably come closer to when that transition happens, but I also don't wanna freak her out by talking about it, you know, too early.
Yeah, too early because it'll be in the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might kind of, I think, you know, kind of starting in August, like having more of those conversations. And I also think it's good to like help them get excited, you know, because there is new things are also exciting, you know, as well as anxiety provoking. I had a little kid, which I love this. She's like, you know, I'm like nerve-sighted. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. What is nerve-sighted? And she's like, nervous and excited, you know, mixed. And I was like, yeah, I like that. So, you know, and I think that's a good one for little kids because sometimes it's hard to have, you know, for them to understand having two feelings at the same time, especially two opposing feelings like nervous and excited. So that nerve-sighted thing was cool. And we talked about what was making her feel excited and kind of, you know, pumping that up. You know, if the school has a mascot, isn't it going to be fun to be a bear, you know, and whatever, kind of that, pump them up, and then, oh yeah, you know, right. You might feel a little nervous at first, that's normal. Everybody there does, you know. Everybody who's starting off in a new school, everybody starting off a new school year is feeling that way.
And to your question too, I feel like kids have this natural way of asking kind of what they're ready for. And so I think with any, you know, big thing coming up that you kind of let her lead, I mean, in August, start preparing, but I think kids naturally ask what they're ready to hear and they naturally share kind of the worries that they have. So sometimes we can put extra worries on them if we don't kind of let them lead with what they're thinking and what they're feeling, that kind of thing.
Wait, one caveat, I've had to learn this the hard way. I have one, Paige is laughing because she knows my little one. When you have kids that are pretty cognitive, they may ask you questions that you're like, I don't actually think you're ready for this, and that's okay too. You know that too. So sometimes you have to slow down and be like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna give you more information about that as you get older.
Yeah.
I think this is the right amount of information for you to know right now. So just throwing it out there in case you have one of those kids, because you know, I do. And I thought, wait, I thought she was only supposed to be asking the questions she was ready to hear. Oh, wait, that's not what's happening right now. This is not a question that's gonna be helpful, an answer that's gonna be helpful to her right now. one more question before we go. Anybody else have a burning question? Yes, ma'am.
My daughter recently got diagnosed with autism, so we had an evaluation
Yes.
to discuss her results, but they told me that one of the main concerns was her always wanting to play by herself. And so my question is that normal, or that she wants to be by herself all the time and not wanna play with her, like with other little kids her age, or?
Yeah, so with autism, that's normal for autism, but obviously we want to help her develop social skills. So they may have had a way they said, hey, we're going to help her develop some social skills so she learns how to interact with other people, because that's important. Yeah, so I would say it's typical for autism, but we want to help her work towards having, good social skills so she can make friends, and even though it might look a little bit different, that she can do that, because that's going to be important. Is she verbal? I should probably
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, so that, exactly, so you're gonna wanna, help, whether that's social skills that she gets at school, or joining a social skills group outside of school. How old is she?
She's just turned 8.
Okay.
Yes.
I think, with the earlier stuff, I think knowing her baseline, I mean, she's gonna be more likely to spend time by herself in general, but helping her, step out of even her normal and create, social opportunities and potentially social skills groups to have those as well, so.
Well, thank you all so much, you've been so great. If you have any questions, Christy mentioned that you could email her and she would make sure she got them to us. We're redoing our website, so we have a website right now. A new one's gonna launch, and it should have, we're hoping to have more information on it that's just helpful, like as a resource for people, so hopefully that'll be good. But thank you again so much for being here, thanks for your time.
Thanks, you guys. This is fun. Thank you ladies so much, we really appreciate that. We will, they've given me permission, we have recorded this, so we want a link to go back and listen again. I'll be able to send that to you, and also we'll be able to send you a copy of their PowerPoint, so have some of the notes and things on that as well. If you had an opportunity, we'd love for you to fill out the question sheet, because we want to do things for you guys to give you classes like this that are helpful and help you as parents, because we want to walk this parenting journey with you. So I'd love to have ideas. Again, you can email me or anybody on our team. Thank you all for being here tonight. And I'm just going to say one little thing on my own. Little soapbox that I think they would agree with. When you brought up isolation, you made a comment about your daughter wanting to be alone. Isolation and technology are a bad combination. So just really watch that. Like if you have a teenager particularly, but even a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old that all they do is go in their room and get on their iPad and play games. I won't go into the story of a friend of mine and her 12-year-old son's best friend and how that turned into a really, really, really difficult situation. Because pornography is very real, it's very easy to access, and it can really create a whole nother layer of anxiety, depression, all those things with kids, and it can exacerbate the problem. So anyway, just a little side note. So thank you guys again, and we'll see you guys later. Thank you all so much.